my name is Alice Quinn, and today I'm going to be reviewing the book titled Fire by Kristine Cashore. Kristine Cashore is a fantasy author known for writing character-driven fantasy novels that explore deeply into social and ethical themes, and her novel Fire delivers just that. But before I dive more into the story, let's talk about its setting. Fire is the second book published in the Garsling Realm series, a completed book series consisting of 5 novels. This series is set in a fantasy world where there are 7 kingdoms that neighbor each other in a circular shape. In these 7 kingdoms, some humans are able to manifest special abilities called grace. These people are named Garslings, and you can tell who they are by their two-tone eyes. Their powers could range from strong abilities like mind control or super strength, and also weird abilities like eating rocks and the unhinged jaw, which gives you the ability to make your jaw really big or like make your mouth really wide. Separated from them by a mountain range is the Kingdom of Dells. The Kingdom of Dells is home to various monsters and creatures not found in the 7 kingdoms and is where Fire is set in. This world takes inspiration from olden times where there are kings and no firearms. As we see in Fire, there are men who go into war on horseback. What is fun about this series is that you don't have to read the books in any particular order, since each book is set around different characters at different times and location. Each book almost feels like a diary. Readers get to experience the character's world through different viewpoints and their experiences, including the cultures and they have been taught as young. It is very fun to read about these people and this whole story, as their stories are connected to each other in a very interesting way. With the author's vivid way of writing, while reading Fire, I felt like I was actually part of the story. Like I was present seeing all the events in the story unfold. That is all for a setting. Let's now dive into the book's summary and characters. Fire follows the story of a character named Fire, who is the last human monster of the Dells. Being a human monster means that Fire has special powers. She is sort of like a siren whose beauty lures people in and can control their minds with her voice. Additionally, she can speak to others telepathically, alter their emotions, extract information, and even make them see and feel things that aren't really there. Her weakness is against strong-minded people, as they are harder to control than weaker individuals. Though her powers may seem to be blessings to others, for Fire it felt more like a curse. You see, her powers was something passed down to her by her father, Cashore, who has a notorious reputation for being an evil, cruel man that uses his powers to hurt others for his own twisted pleasure and hunger for power. It was he who controlled the former Delling king Nax to do his bidding, resulting in the kingdom becoming unstable. It was he who would keep monsters as pets to play and torture them. And it was he who had tormented so many people that Fire as his daughter became a victim to the Dellian people's resentment. With a corrupted ruler, the royal family soon became unfavorable in the eyes of the common people. Seeing an opportunity to take over the Dells, power-hungry lords Lord Migdog and Lord Genshin turned traitorous. They built armies and planned strategically in the shadows until it was the right moment to strike. With the Dells being in the brink of war between the royal family and the rebel lords, Fire is very conflicted. She's conflicted on whether she should intervene in the war. Her assistance with her mind-controlling powers would be a tremendous help and possibly determine who would be victorious. But Fire doesn't like to use her powers, fearing in becoming like her father. But as the war progresses, it seems that using her powers is very unavoidable, as it could be the only way to protect those she cares about. Fire grew up in the northern parts of the Dells, where her father's estate is located. Cashore would often leave to king cities equivalent to the Dells royal capital to work as the king's advisor. So Fire became acquainted with her neighbor Lord Brooker and his son Archer. Brooker was like a second father to Fire. He was kind, gentle, and always smiled at Fire warmly. He was like the opposite of her actual father, and soon Fire started to call him father too. Brooker, as the former commander of the Royal Army, taught Fire all about military strategies and history. He found a music tutor for Fire when she expressed a liking for the art form. Music is another major characteristic of Fire, as she is described as being a very talented musician who can play multiple instruments. But her main instrument is a fiddle, which, if you don't know, is similar to a violin. Music was something that comforted Fire through tough times, and she is often seen playing music on her fiddle after stressful or challenging events in the book. A character who often reassures Fire whenever she doubted herself was Archer, Brooker's adopted son. Archer is Fire's childhood friend and lover. He is an excellent archer and taught Fire how to shoot. Fire and Archer's romantic relationship became strained as the story progresses, as Archer becomes more and more possessive of Fire. When they were younger, Archer used to be this good guy who would uplift, encourage, and comfort Fire whenever she felt down. But as they grow up together, Archer begins to realize how other men could steal Fire away from him at any given time, seeing that Fire is so beautiful. This fear leads to Archer seeing Fire more as an object he possesses than a partner. He is a hypocrite in a way, as he doesn't allow Fire to be in contact with any other man, but he can sleep around with other women. Archer's growing jealousy and unfairness and treatment of Fire drives their relationship apart, with Fire stating Archer has changed and she wanted her friend back. There are also another reason why Fire and Archer's relationship deteriorated. It's because Fire has fallen for another guy, Briggan. Briggan is the official second prince of the Dells and the current commander of the Royal Army. Briggan at first was very wary around Fire, suspecting she would try to seduce his brother Nash, the new young king of Dells, which was to be expected with who her father is. On the other hand, Fire is also guarded around Briggan, as he has a very, very strong mind that not even Fire could penetrate. Every time she tries to take control, the princess' mind would just push her out. Briggan and the First Army later escorts Fire to the King's City, as per King Nash's orders, and also with Fire's consent. The plan was to see if Fire could use her powers to extract information from a hostage they had, hoping they could get valuable information about what the rebel lords are planning. Fire accepted to go to King's City because, one, she was curious about what the city was like, as she never went, and second, at this point in the story, Fire has started to question what she could do to help. During this trip, Briggan and Fire started to form a bond connecting through similar experience of grief. Both had habits of wandering around at night from the struggle of having constant nightmares. So they would have late night conversations, which they continued doing even after arriving at King City. It is through these conversations that made Fire more comfortable in the large, unfamiliar royal palace, and what made Fire catch feelings for Briggan. I think it is very predictable by now that people of the King's City would grow scared at the sight of Fire. As she enters the city with Briggan and his army, people look scared at the sight of her. It is to be expected with their knowledge of what kind of monster Cashore was, and it isn't surprising that people would think she was the same. Though Cashore is a horrible person, he is surprisingly a caring father. I wouldn't say Cashore is a good father. But through what I can speculate from Fire's memories of him, Kensaro cared deeply about his daughter. Kensaro never planned to have children. In fact, whenever he learned he had got a woman pregnant, he would kill her. But somehow, Kensaro didn't know of Fire's existence until she was born. Judging from what he had did to the other woman who carried his offspring, readers were questioning why did he let Fire live? Which is a great question, as not even Fire knew what the answer was. But here's what I think happened. When Kensaro met Fire as a baby, he might have tried to kill her, but when she sensed that this child had the same powers as him, as she speak to him telepathically, he stopped in his tracks as fatherly instinct to protect his young kicked in. Seeing how much his daughter was like him, he spared her. It is kind of true if you suspect that Kensaro might have thought of training Fire to become his successor, but that seems unlikely as Kensaro never really pushes Fire to train. He does help Fire with his powers, which makes Fire connect with Kensaro with their similar powers, but he never really hurt Fire or pushed her to train. In fact, Kensaro never really pushed any of his ideals on Fire. He was the type of father who doted on his daughter, got Fire anything she wanted, and didn't really discourage Fire in learning music, which is something I expected him to do, but he was actually the one who gifted Fire's beloved fiddle. It was a thoughtful gift, as Kensaro says how he got it for Fire, learning that it sounded good. Most of all, Kensaro would always fiercely defend and protect Fire, though in very extremely methods, sometimes to the point of almost killing someone if they just mistakenly hurt Fire. It showed Kensaro does really love Fire, and Fire in turn does see that he had loved her. And a quote in the book that is on page 449, she tells Briggan how he never tried to own me, Briggan. Rowan said that Kensaro could never see a beautiful thing without wanting to possess it. But he did not try to possess me. He let me be my own. That is all for characters and summary. Next is conflict and challenges. There are two major conflicts in the story that go hand in hand. One is Fire's fear of using her powers, and two, the Delian War. The Mingxi, being a human monster, means that she's very beautiful. And being very beautiful means always comes with a price. For Fire is that she is in constant target of man's desire, and if she's not careful, she could get really hurt, which means that she's always guarded by guards assigned by her childhood friend, Archer. And it doesn't really help in her situation that her hair is very luminous and unique. It gives monsters the idea that she is prey, and people that she is obviously different, a human monster, and Kensaro's daughter. This makes it really hard to hide her identity, and she is seeing the story not very comfortable showing other people she doesn't know her hair. It probably stands with people always looking at her whenever she shows her hair, and it kind of shows me as a reader that she is constantly hiding a part of herself and seems to not really accept herself or her powers, as all this struggle that comes with being a human monster makes her miserable. And she is always in the northern part of Dells, and she never has ventured anywhere other than the Queen's fortress. Now, the Delian War pushes Fire out of her comfort zone, as she is requested by King Nash to go to King City and to see if her powers could help them get new information. It's through this trip and going to King City that she makes new acquaintances, friends, and learn about new things. And when she is given the task, if she could help them get information, at first she rejects it, as she says she only uses her powers to defend herself and not use it on other people. But later, she starts thinking, what if she could use her powers to help the people she loves? And after thinking for a while and persuasions of other people, Fire decides to help out and basically become the royal family's information agent. Now this transitions me to talk about the theme of the story, which is a major theme is self-acceptance. As we see in the beginning, Fire is very reluctant of using her powers. She's very scared of using them, as if she has example like her father, she would use them to hurt others. But later in the story, she finds that she can use her powers to help others and is more comfortable with it. She now doesn't really bundle her hair that much around her friends and is very happy and has found her place in the world. The second theme that also was present in the story is that the truth hurts. Indeed, the truth hurts, as many times in the story where the truth makes everything weigh so much more. One instance is Archer's heritage. Archer is actually the son of Brooker's wife and a brute that was sent by the king to punish Brooker for something he had done. And in the story, Archer actually dies in the hand of another Archer, which we don't really know much, but that he was in prison for raping a woman, and as later pieced by Fire, could actually be Archer's dad, which makes it very sad that he was killed by his own father. And back to what Brooker had done to anger the king so much was that he impregnated the queen, which ended with the queen giving birth to Brigand. I know, very, very messy. But that is it for this segment. The next segment is positives and negatives and my favorite parts of the story. There's a lot of positives and negatives in this story. One positive is that the author is really good at capturing what war is really like. She doesn't sugarcoat it. She shows how the Royal Army is separated in different sections. There's the main force, the second force, the third force, the archers, the spies, and everyone, all the groups that comes together to help fight the war. She also shows the royal family really busy, not getting enough sleep, and mentally drained from the war, which is very realistic, which leads me to another positive point is of a good royal family that really cares about their people. They doesn't spend on unnecessary things. They use their funds to fight the war, and when the war is over, help rebuild the city and get it better. And one example that really shows is how the army people would kill for Brigand. They would die for him, and yeah. Another positive point is how they shine light on how hard is being a woman on her period. As the main character is a female human monster, she also has periods, but what's unique about her period is that her blood attracts other monsters, so she would be constantly be attacked during her period, which makes her very vulnerable, showing in a realistic way of what period feels like. Negatives are how in the story there's minimum cussing and a lot of references to sexual assaults and a lot of fair babies like Archer, Briggan, and Briggan has two twin siblings who are also from a fair by their father. So, yeah, but overall, it really just captures the negatives of humans and their natures. Now to my favorite part of the story. My favorite part of the whole story is seeing the romantic relationship between Briggan and Fire develop. It was very nice to see how they first didn't really trust each other, but as they started to know more each other, they got more comfortable and connected, and which ended in them becoming a couple. All that feels very normal and smooth, and I really enjoyed all the scenes they had together. That's all for this section. Next section, I will be discussing about another book review on Fire. To get a better understanding of a story, it is nice to hear what other people think. In the New York Times review of this book, Fire, titled Dangerous Beauty by Alyssa Court, compares Fire to Greek myths and shows like Heroes and X-Men, saying how they too show the downsides of having superpowers. She then goes on to talk about common tropes that she has noticed in the book, like young women getting pregnant and regretting it, and the trend of having a female telepath who falls in love to the person who is unaffected by her powers. She then goes on to point out the flaw of the story, how there's way too many characters to keep count of, but then says how I thinking that is what the author intended to make you feel like you're Fire who's drained by strangers, as she could see everyone's mind. And when she travels with the First Army, she is traveling with thousands of people and she has to keep track of everyone so she doesn't get hurt, since people in the army are going to resent her because of her father. And then says how there's plot devices in the story. One is benefit and burden of physical attractiveness, and the story is basically all that, as it's said over and over again as we see Fire struggling with attracting people's attention and to herself. And that's all what makes her very not accept herself in the beginning, but she begins to do that as we see at the end of the story. And wraps the review up with saying how this story could appeal to those who likes action, romance, and mysterious creatures, and that readers can understand that even special powers have their downside by reading this story, which I very much agree, and that leads me to my recommendations. I think this story is very good. Like the review from New York Times, I do think it feels like a Greek myth with like it being many long poems like the epics. As in the beginning there's a prologue that shows the beginning of another character from in the series, and it was very interesting to read. It almost felt like a Greek myth and I enjoyed it, and I think this book is a great one for those who love to read medieval stories set in medieval times fantasy. And that's all for this book review. Thank you.